Hello, everyone. Welcome to the next episode of YugabyteDB Community Open Hours. That's Denis Magda. And here is my wonderful colleague, Franck.
Hi.
Pachot. How are you doing, Franck?
Good, and you?
So far, so good. The last week was crazy for me. I was traveling a couple of times, went to Los Angeles. That was my first time in the 2 years after I moved from California. And then tomorrow I'm heading to Salt Lake City, meeting with another Java user group community. How was your week?
Cool. Mine was calm, preparing my presentation for next week.
Yeah. We're going actually to highlight this, right? We're going to talk about upcoming conference talks in Europe in a couple of minutes. But before we do that, folks, those who are watching us, let us know that you can see us, hear us, tell us whenever you are joining from. We are curious to know what part of the world you live in, and get ready for the wonderful episode that Franck and I prepared. But nevertheless, to remind everyone, including myself and Franck, what this show is all about, it's a platform for all of us, for YugabyteDB community members, to get connected, at least virtually, once in 2 weeks, and have your questions answered and to discuss the latest updates and developments in YugabyteDB. All right. So we have comments. Yep, we have. Yep, silence for now. But nevertheless, let's keep going. With the
And people in the chat can also tell us if it's too early or too late for them. We may adapt the time to the different time zones. This time is probably the best for most places, but maybe not all.
It always, it's hard to appeal to everyone because the planet is very big, right? So right now for me it's 11 a.m. It's in the east coast of the United States. It's 5 p.m. for you, right, Franck?
Yes.
In Europe, in Asia, in India, and Singapore, it's much later. But nevertheless, keep coming, keep sharing the feedback from us, and be ready to ask your questions. In the meantime, we are starting with our first section of the show, the highlights, something notable that happened or coming in the world of YugabyteDB. So, and one big thing that happened a couple of weeks ago, we released Voyager 1.3 release. And another big thing is that Franck and Fritz, our also colleague, are going to travel across multiple conferences in the coming weeks. And that's going to be a big opportunity for you and for the community to meet if you live nearby. So why don't we start with Voyager release? I will give you folks a quick update. Let me share the screen. Okay. Done. So what happened with the Voyager 1.3 release? If you go to the technical documentation, you will find there are changes. There are several changes, but the most important one is this, folks. Just take a look at this. Export data for MySQL and Oracle is now 2 and 4 times faster. That's a huge win. That's a big deal. And but at the same time, it's not ready for the production usage. We treat this optimization as a beta at the time of this recording. So when you will be watching this, probably a couple of weeks later, a month later, it might be already ready for the production. But nevertheless, this is how you can enable this optimization. And then we had an internal conversation because there are no many details that explain how this optimization was achieved. But we had a chance to talk to our engineering team. And what the engineering team said is as follows. So the previous versions of YugabyteDB Voyager, before 1.3.0, they used Aura to BGA extension. This is one of the extensions and tools that exist for MySQL and Oracle that can help you to migrate from MySQL and Oracle to PostgreSQL. And as long as we are PostgreSQL compatible, you can use the same tool to migrate to YugabyteDB. And how, I don't know, probably Franck, you know the details of that tool, how it works.
Yeah, it's quite an old tool because it's written in Perl, and I don't think we write a lot in Perl now. But it's also the value of it. It exists for a long time, and it follows the different versions of Postgres as a target, but also as the sources like Oracle. And yeah, basically it automates many things to get the data and move it.
Wonderful. Yeah, exactly. And if to judge by this slide is generally take snapshots from your source database, let it be Oracle or MySQL, does snapshots, and then you import those snapshots to YugabyteDB or PostgreSQL.
Yeah, the most important for those tools, a migration is a project, so it's something that you run several times to prepare it, and Aura2PG puts everything in a directory, the schema, the changes, the data, and then you can really rehearse the migration before the live one.
Wonderful. Yeah, yeah. But nevertheless, yeah, that's what we use in the current production version of YugabyteDB Voyager. And what's coming, what was released in the beta mode in YugabyteDB 3.1.30 is this. Right now, we use Debezium. We actually have our own fork of Debezium. We use Debezium for change data capture. We use it for YugabyteDB core, YugabyteDB managed, etc. And right now, we also use it for the live migration. And with that optimization, we achieved 4x times performance improvement. This is how it works. So you certainly can do snapshots as well as with PG is with the previous extension, but also you can do the real time. You can capture and apply real-time changes. And this is actually what would allow us to achieve the live migration. So something like that. So keep in mind that, guys. And if you are still familiar, new to YugabyteDB Voyager, here is we have a playlist on our YugabyteDB YouTube channel, where you can see how to use the tool to migrate from Postgres, Oracle, or MySQL. All right.
Maybe we can add something. When we see Debezium there, Debezium is used for logical replication, and then people might already guess about the future features, like doing live migration with logical replication.
Yeah, exactly. Because
this is where we are going slowly. Yeah.
You know what's interesting? Those videos that I showed to you folks, when we created the content and we posted it on YouTube and we posted it also on different blogging platforms, we've got a couple of similar questions. Folks were saying, yeah, wonderful. That's brilliant that right now there is an easy way to migrate from one database to another. But how about live migration? Because when you run in production, usually you will take a big snapshot, right, large one, you apply it to your YugabyteDB cluster, but then you want to migrate also the live changes because you don't want to stop your existing database, let it be MySQL or Postgres or Oracle. So, and this is what we have been working on right now. All right, Franck, the second highlight. Tell us about the upcoming conferences. Where are you going? What are you going to talk about? And who is joining you there?
Yeah, maybe I will share my screen to show where are those conferences. Let me check the share screen button. Okay, just to give an idea, so that's in Europe, and next week there is a lot in Germany coming. So 2 conferences next week. One, the good thing is that there are 2 conferences nearly at the same place near Cologne. And that's quite good because I have a talk at those 2 conferences. They are at the same time, but at least in the same city. The well-known JCon conferences, the Java conference, where I will talk about microservices and the different thing. Do you prefer to have one database per microservice? The problems with that? Can you share a database between multiple microservices, and how distributed database can help also on that? So that's a talk. And the other one in Cologne is in Cloudland. That's I think it's a new conference that started last year, and it's organized by the DOAG, the famous Oracle conference in Germany. And here I will present. Let me maybe show the Cloudland. Yeah, and I will not present alone. I'm doing a workshop there. And I don't even know if I told you, Denis, but Alil will join me. Alil, who is working in sales as a region manager, he will join me in doing the workshop to help people
that's
installing
great.
Yugabyte.
That's excellent. And how long is going to be your workshop? A couple of hours?
I think the workshop is 2 hours. Yeah, and the goal is to give people information about why distributed SQL, but by also using it and installing it on Docker on their laptop. So yeah, that will be fun. That's for next week. And
let's take a pause here. So folks, just my personal recommendation to you, because I had a chance to at least attend one of the Franck's workshops virtually. It was during the last DSS summit about indexing. So don't miss this opportunity, especially if you live nearby in Germany or like in France, I don't know, in Spain. Take a train or jump on a plane. Go there, because that's a unique opportunity. He's a master in that. You want to learn about distributed SQL, you want to learn more about the databases in general, and you can find Franck actually for the coordinates and details. Just find him on LinkedIn or Twitter. Okay. Let's go forward.
It's also a good occasion to meet people, different kind of people, Java conference and cloud conference, to meet people and discuss. I'm also very interested by the feedback, what people think about cloud native databases, if they already started to move to the cloud, all that. Yeah, and the week after, that's Postgres conference, the Postgres conference in Germany. So this one is in Essen. It's just near Düsseldorf. I think there are 2 tracks, one in German and one in English. Of course, my talk will be in the English one. Let me show the schedule. There are 3 tracks actually, and in German, and then I didn't even see that I start the day with a session on PG int plan.
Come earlier. And also, yeah. Franck, if I'm not mistaken, our dear colleague Fritz Hugland, he is also presenting at this conference, right? Where is he? Let's find his session. It's about,
and is at the end. So we start and we end the conference. He's talking about memory, and that's of course useful for Postgres and for Yugabyte, but basically it's very important to understand how memory works on Linux, because there are many things that even if everybody works with Linux, a lot of people do not exactly know how memory is used and how I/O is done and buffered by Linux. It's very important in Postgres and Yugabyte because there is some kind of double buffering. A database has its own shared buffers, but the relies also on the OS to buffer and prefetch data to do less I/O calls.
Yeah, that talk, in my understanding, right, your talk about PG int plan will be extremely useful for those who run and use databases in production, probably pretty much everyone, and they need to understand how to find and optimize queries, right, bottlenecks and optimize queries. What comes to Fritz,
this memory, all conferences all sessions there are really good, so that's also a good occasion to meet the Postgres community.
Yeah, because because this talk, the talk by Franck and the talk by Fritz, they are about PostgreSQL. Yeah, Franck, as far as I understand, you used YugabyteDB as an example during the hands-on, right? Because we are
compiling. Yeah, the fact is that PG plan is a Postgres extension, and in Yugabyte we install it by default because we know that it's important to have it when you need it. You don't want to install it later. But it's also not very well documented, and there are a few tips and tricks to know before using it correctly. And usually when you need it, it's when you have a problem in production. So better know the tool before rather than discover it when you need it.
Yep. And the free and the I can also give the final update, the more details on the talk by Fritz on where the memory goes in PostgreSQL. That's going to be just primarily about PostgreSQL. But why do we still come and talk is because we are also PostgreSQL community, right? Whether we like it or not, we like it. But YugabyteDB is distributed Postgres, and we also want to stay in touch with the broader PostgreSQL community. And this talk is, I had a conversation, we had several conversations with Fritz on this topic. Folks, it's just mind-blowing. Like, Fritz is a geek who likes to look into the internals of the operating system, of the hardware, of Linux, of databases. And I have not seen the final material yet, and I think this conference is going to be the first time he presents it. And then he is going to PG Day in Switzerland, right?
Yeah, I think I have also the link there. So that's a one-day small conference, a very, very nice place, just near Zurich, near the lake, in a university just near the lake, the perfect place where you want to study or go to for a conference.
Stop teasing me and others.
I will not go there because I have my son's graduation at the same time, but I really recommend also the schedule. So Fritz, I think, is presenting the same one on memory. And yeah, there are also a lot of interesting sessions there. It's really good to go to Postgres conferences because Postgres is open source. It's a community, and around Postgres, there are also many tools and forks and all that. And it's also good to go to the big conferences, but also the small PG days like that, because it may be easier to meet people, discuss with people. And even if it's a small conference one day, you can see that you see also the main actors of the Postgres community. So good idea also to talk to people there. If it's the first time you go to Postgres conferences or any conferences, do not hesitate to talk to people, talk to others, talk to speakers. We are all coming there to share and learn from the others.
Yeah, personally, I equally like big conferences like Spring One or AWS reInvent, and the same as small conferences when you have just 20, 30 people. Because the beauty of the smaller ones is it feels like an extended family. It's community. You truly can have an opportunity to talk to everyone. When you go to a big conference, usually you talk to those who you already know or like you've seen in the past. Okay, so with that, we are done with the highlights. And right now, folks, the rest of the show is for your questions, whatever bothers you about YugabyteDB. We certainly, Franck and I, we already keep track of we create the list of the most frequently asked questions, and we are ready to show you something related to the smart driver and the extensions. But if you have any questions right now, or that you will get them throughout this episode, just type them in your platform. We know that some of you watch us on Twitter, on Twitch, or LinkedIn, or YouTube. And you've got the first question, Franck. The question is from, let me show you, from LinkedIn by Keval Holakia. Sorry if I mispronounce your name, Keval, but the question is, any update on the RPM-based installation of YugabyteDB? It's like for Linux. Franck, do you know anything about that? Because I was not...
I don't.
So let's...
I don't even know if there is a Git issue so for that. So we will check, and do not hesitate to open a Git issue with that. I don't think we have a RPM yet. I'm not sure it's really useful, but it can be handy to automate the installations.
Yeah, I just Googled Fox a little bit, and I think that Keval, you also did that. But nevertheless, the Google shows that tools like YB-Stats, the one that Fritz also is contributing to, right? It's available through the RPM package installation, but I don't see anything available for
the thing is, for databases, it's a bit more complex, because the idea of RPM packaging is that you can just DNF update and get the new version. And when it is about a database, of course, you will do the same, but you have something more to do to upgrade the database. So you will update the nodes, install the latest version, and then be careful that you are doing rolling upgrade to rolling restart of the nodes, for example. But yeah, it can be useful for automation, of course. For the moment, we deploy with a zip or tarball, and you just install it like this, or with a container image if you install on containers on Kubernetes.
Yeah, Keval, that's a good question too. What's your use case? How would you like to use the RPM package? As you see, none of us, we have an answer for that, but write down what's your question and we can, what's your use case? Because Franck, in my personal usually use case for the RPM packages when it comes to databases, I used in the past RPM to install my local instance of the database for the development and testing just on my laptop. But then I switched to Docker. So right now I use Docker whenever I want to run any installation of the database locally. So Keval, share the use case right now and we can discuss, or we can, yep. So Franck, you found something?
Yeah, I just share quickly the download page that we have to show it. So basically for each platform, for Linux, we just have the download and no RPM. For Docker, we have the image. That's basically what we have. And yeah, if we can do it, but the good thing is to know exactly how it will be used. So if it's to install automatically servers with all dependencies and the package, that can be a good idea also to have all dependencies there, and then doing just to upgrade, just installing new versions and adding the nodes with that's a kind of rolling upgrade as well. But yeah, the thing is also the version. Probably if we package in a RPM, we need also the preview version, because that's what we use in maybe development environment. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. So Keval, hopefully this answer not 100%. I know that not 100% answers your question, but again, come to the Slack. Let's continue the conversation there, and then we can, as Franck said, we can issue
or open a Git issue, and then with the Git issue, people can vote, and if there is a need for it, of course we can do it.
Yeah, that's the community way, right? I mean, sometimes it's easier to get something done by the community rather than by a big vendor. So it's an option. Okay, so folks, keep your, again, any issues, any questions, any implementation details of YugabyteDB, anything you would like to know about YugabyteDB, ask a question. In the meantime, Franck, why don't we go to a couple of frequently asked questions that we see from time to time on the community Slack?
Yeah.
So the first one is this. Should I use multiple hosts in smart drivers connection stream? And if, for instance, I have a multi-node cluster, which is basically usually the case. So let me answer this question. So the question is, folks, as you know, we have, as a PostgreSQL compliant database, we can use a PostgreSQL driver by default. But also we introduced for several languages our own driver that is called the smart driver. Why that driver is so smart? The driver can connect to your cluster. The driver can figure out IP addresses of all of the cluster nodes. It can load balance requests. It can take care of the fault tolerance if any of the nodes goes down, and the driver will reopen a connection. So that's why it's called smart. And the question is about like one configuration property that is called additional endpoints. So let me show you the demo. Let me show the demo for that. I'm sharing the screen. This one. And let me hide the banners, because I know that they abstract the view. Yeah, that's what we're going to do. So the demo is very simple, folks. I have a 3-node YugabyteDB cluster running on my laptop. Let's see what we have. We have this function that actually can return you a list of the nodes. All the nodes are in Docker, and I don't have any relations. I don't have any tables yet. So what we are gonna do next is let's quit, and also let's open the UI just to make sure that's the cluster. No any tables, only system tables from Postgres and YugabyteDB, and there is no any load on the cluster. This is actually the bug. I know I sometimes I see some number here, even though the cluster was never under any workload. This is what I need to submit. Okay, so jumping back, and here is, let's say I have an application. I have a market orders application that connects to the cluster and inserts various trades from the New York Stock Exchange, like from some, MAC data. And the connection, the application also is going to be running in the Docker. I will be using this cluster aware data source. This is actually our smart driver. This is what we call the smart driver. And by default, the primary connection endpoint is this. Just I decided to connect to YugabyteDB node number 2. Okay. And the rest, once the driver, the beauty of this driver, once the driver connects to YugabyteDB node number 2, then the driver will learn IP addresses of the other 2 nodes, and then it will start load balancing requests. This is what the driver does. And the question is about this connectivity setting, additional endpoints, because here is I also define this additional endpoints, and I'm telling the driver that I have YugabyteDB node number 1 and YugabyteDB node number 3. But this property is used only during the connection initialization time. In the following use case, let's say that your driver wants to open a connection to the database, and by default, the driver is going to use this primary connection endpoint. If this primary connection endpoint is not available right now for any reason, only then the driver will use one of the connection endpoints from here, only if the primary endpoint is unavailable. But if, let's say, you don't specify this configuration at all, and you just use the primary connection endpoint, you connect, and you still will learn IP addresses of all of the other nodes. So that's basically just a safeguard for you. If anything happens, this one is not available. Restarting, upgrading, then the driver will be able to connect to this and still learn the IP addresses of all their cluster nodes. Make sense? So let's see how it works. Let me stop this container. It's already stopped, which is good. And I'm starting this application in the container. Now it will connect, it will create the schema. I'm starting this application for the first time. It's very small and tiny database, just a couple of tables. And the data is going to be streamed from the internet. There is some external service that generates MAC data for trades. People buy stocks, people sell stocks. So that's my trade table. So let's wait. So and the driver, as you see, connected successfully through the YugabyteDB node number 2. I use materialized view here for some reason. Okay, we are connected, and right now we streaming changes trades from here. Let's see what's happening. Okay, I have the first trades in the cluster. Good to know. And if you jump back here, you'll see that the smart driver, and nevertheless, like the cluster overall, the load is balanced. Like every node is handling reads and writes because the data is sharded, and every node is a primary for one subset of the data and a follower for another subset of the data. So now let's imagine that something happened, I know, some outage in an availability zone, and my YugabyteDB node number 2 is dying. I can do this by stopping this container, YugabyteDB node number 2. I'll stop it, and then you'll see that the cluster very shortly, you see that's the node. It's no longer responding to the heartbeats. And once once we reach the 60 seconds threshold, the node will be excluded from the cluster, okay? But nevertheless, the rest of the cluster nodes, they keep executing their requests. All is good, all is working. So the driver, because why this is happening? Because the driver connected to the cluster using YugabyteDB number 2, but then the driver also figured out IP addresses of the other 2 nodes. And the application, if I go to the application, it's all right. It keeps working. Let's see. Yeah, you see the new trades are coming. So no any disruption to the application.
And you have a Java application, right?
Yeah, that's a Java application. Yeah.
Yeah, because we have a question from Keval asking what happens if you connect, for example, with DB Either, and as this is also other tool, as DB Either is also a Java application, you can also use the smart driver and it will work the same.
Exactly.
So basically, to answer this question, if you connect through a HIA proxy, then you will go to one node or the other. If you connect to a specific endpoint and you have this smart driver, then you can go to one node or the other.
Exactly. Doesn't matter. Like if you can select the smart driver in the DB, right? You can just show it. Then it's all the same. It doesn't matter. And finally, right? Let's do this. Let's stop this application for now. And what I want to do is to remind us, right? The application was connected by default to YugabyteDB node number 2. Okay. And right now that container is stopped. It doesn't work, right? It's dead. And the application is no longer running. But right now, let's say that I want to restart the application. I do not change this configuration setting. So the driver first will try to connect using YugabyteDB node number 2, which is obviously dead. And then, as long as the node is not available, the driver will connect to the cluster using one of these endpoints. Let's check that that's the case. So I will start this container once again. Yeah, this exception basically says that the schema already exists. The application tries to create the schema on the startup, but you see, we managed to connect using the additional endpoints. And if we are going back to the cluster, you see the load, right? I connected through one of these endpoints, and then the driver also figured out the addresses of the remaining one. So good. And then let's say the good time happens, you recover, restore this node. Let's do this. It will be added back to the cluster, and that node also will start responding to your application requests. So yeah, at some point, the data will be reshuffled and the requests will be coming to this node. Anyway, so that's how it works. Any other questions, folks? Hopefully this answers the questions on should I use multiple hosts in smart drivers configuration string if I have 3 and more nodes? Yes, you should, but you define more than one if it's possible that during the connection time the primary endpoint is not available. In all other use cases, if the primary endpoint that you define in the configuration is always available, then the additional endpoints will never be used. But the driver always.
Yeah, sorry. So in practice, you need multiple endpoints because one can be down, but you don't need all endpoints. And that's the goal, because the goal of scaling out in distributed SQL databases, the goal is to have the elasticity, adding new nodes, and you don't want to change the configuration when you add new nodes. So you just put a few of them in the endpoint, and then new nodes will be discovered automatically to balance the load.
Yep, excellent point. Yep, and yep.
Okay, well, maybe we can also mention that the first one, they are taken in order. The first one and then the next one. So the multiple hosts doesn't do some kind of round robin. It's just the first one, and if it's not available, then the next one. So you can also use that to go to the closest one first.
Exactly. There are many ways here you can fine tune your driver, but that's another question. So Franck, let's get to another frequently asked question. Let me find it because
we had many questions about extensions.
Yeah, how to test if a PostgreSQL extension works in YugabyteDB. So tell us more about extensions, please.
Yeah, and I will share my screen because I've written a few blog posts about that. I've written a few blog posts because there are different cases, different situations. Extensions, some extensions are pre-bundled with Postgres, and then we have them also with Yugabyte. Some others are additional extension, and we bundle them with Yugabyte to make it easy. Some others can be installed with a RPM, and some others you just have to compile them. So first, I will show the most common case, and let's do a demo with that. An extension that exists in the Postgres repo, and we will just install it with the RPM and show how we install it on Yugabyte. I will run a Docker container.
And Frank, a quick question for you. Will you also show a list of pre-installed extensions on YugabyteDB so that the folks know how to see what's already installed and available? Okay, wonderful.
We'll do that. So I've started the container there. I will start Yugabyte in the container. I'm doing that in the container just because it's a lab. And yeah, we will first connect to it and show where are the extensions. Maybe I can already show where they are installed. If I go to /home/Yugabyte, where I have my installation, there is a subdirectory that it's Postgres. And the extensions are like in Postgres, the extensions are in share extension. This is where they are declared. And for example, if I take, let's take show PG int plan, for example. Wait, yeah, PG plan control. So an extension in Postgres has a file that describes it with its version. There are also some SQL file. I'm showing the SQL file for another one. The SQL file is what will be created to add new functions, for example, new tables. And there is also some code that is there as a library. So in Postgres lib, where there are all libraries, for example, ls pg int. This is the dynamic library that contains the executable of the extension. So this is how they are deployed, and this is the directory of the Yugabyte deployment where there are already some extensions. If I connect SQL/sh, I can describe the extensions. So those are the extensions that are installed. We install pgstat statement by default to gather statistics about what is executed. But if we want to see all the extensions that we can install with create extension, we can just select from pg extension, if I'm not wrong. So we select from and singular.
Available. There was something.
Yeah. I don't remember if available is in front of or at the end. Available extension.
Yeah. Okay, finally.
So, available are those that are in this directory. Be careful, do not install all of them, because here there are some extensions that make sense only in Postgres and not in Yugabyte. For example, page inspects the storage, the pages in the storage, and we have a different storage. Doesn't make sense there.
But let's install it actually. Let's show folks what happens. And while we are doing this, we do this, just for the compatibility, meaning that at least you will not get some brutal error. But when you try to use...
I think this one works, but we just cannot use it. If I describe the extension to see the functions that are there.
I tried to use it. Yeah, it doesn't work. We can use get raw page, for instance. If you use page header.
Yeah, but do you know what?
You can use.
what is the parameter that we need?
Yeah, in Postgres, I frequently use get raw page. The first argument you define the table name, and then it's one of the table names, and the second one is the page name. Like for instance, some demo table and 0 as a page ID.
I create a table.
Something starts, something works. But yeah, like for this one, I was checking it last time on YugabyteDB a long time ago.
Yeah, the thing is that it cannot find a page in the Postgres format. Block number 0 out of
No, don't do this. No, insert the record. No, you need to, you have the same exception in Postgres if your table is empty.
I have one row there.
You have one. Okay, yeah. Because that's actually, something works, but it's not fully supported, because in Postgres works, you know that we have restored the records in the heap, in Postgres heap. And then it's just the records are spread the way Postgres think it needs to be done. And then you have B3 for indexing. YugabyteDB's LSM3 is different. So Frank, while you're...
check if the extension is supported. That means that we have tested it also and do regression test on them. So that's for the extensions that are pre-bundled. And you have the list of them. For example, you can use auto-explain. You can use pgstat statement, of course. There are some others that are installed by default in Yugabyte. And then you can install some of them. And this is what I will do. To give an example. So here I have Yugabyte running on a container, and in this container, I will just get the extension files and put them in the right directory that we have seen. So I'm going, I'm already there, to a temporary directory. I need to install the Postgres repository. The Postgres repository, the PGDG repository, has Postgres software and also many extensions that are already bundled as RPMs. So this is the repository.
Okay, so this is the repository with a bunch of extensions.
Yeah,
that you created.
And I will install one that is sequential UIDs.
Okay.
For sequential UIDs is a way to generate UIDs that are not completely random. They have a prefix that depends on the time and then a random value. You use that if you want a random UID, but having the rows that are inserted at the same time, having them together, you want to cluster them. So that's an extension that can be used just to generate this kind of UIDs. So here I have just installed, not installed, but just downloaded the RPM. And then I have it in my directory. I can look at what is inside in the RPM. Basically, there are the files that go to the share extension directory.
Okay.
And the library. So by default, when you install it on Postgres, on CentOS or Red Hat, it goes in /usr. Here, I will extract it locally and put that in the Yugabyte directory.
All right, all right. Sounds intriguing. Okay, so it was downloaded. You downloaded the GitHub. Then from that GitHub, you just found a way to download their sequential UIDs extension.
Yeah, not from GitHub, here from the repo from RPM.
Yeah.
But yeah, sometimes you can have them as releases on GitHub. And I just create a local /usr and I link it to my Yugabyte home Postgres directory so that when I will extract them, they will go directly to the right place. if I look at the link, my local USR PGSQL 11 goes to the directory where I want to ship it. And yeah, good to mention, because currently the current version of YugabyteDB is compatible with Postgres 11, I rent the version of the extension for Postgres 11. This is when I downloaded, I mentioned second ID for the version 11. So to extract it, actually in a RPM, files are bundled with CPIO, a very old tool that was used more to put files on tapes. But actually, we still use the same with RPMs. And then to extract it, I can use RPM to CPIO and then CPIO to extract it. Extract it locally, but because this is a link, they are directly in my directory.
And also, folks, while Franck is moving forward with the installation, just don't be scared. Franck wants to show you just almost a complete process. He doesn't compile anything, but that what you do for extensions that are not bundled with YugabyteDB or PostgreSQL, because when you download or install YugabyteDB, there are already many extensions, as you've seen a couple of minutes ago. But if you want to install an extension that is not bundled, this is what Franck is demonstrating you right now, just the full process.
Yeah, and that also means that if you need to compile it, just compile it with Postgres 11, and then you take the file, because those files that are in the RPM are just the files that are compiled when you compile it with Postgres 11.
Okay.
So,
okay. And if you will be watching, let's say, this video sometime in the future, then also check what the current version of Postgres YugabyteDB supports, because in the future, we are always trying our best to catch up with the most recent Postgres releases. So we already are working on supporting their newest version of Postgres. But right now in production, as of time of this recording, Postgres 11 was our primary version.
Yeah, we have a lot of questions about when do you support Postgres 15? And yeah, it will come. It was not a priority because most of our customers are okay with the features from Postgres 11. Of course, it will come higher priority because Postgres 11 will end at the end of the year, and then people will start to move to yeah, they should start to move already, but they will go to newer version of Postgres and then use new features, and then we need to follow that. So it's just a question of priority, but everything is done in our fork so that we can merge with new versions. We also already merged from patches. For example, the security fixes that are published by the Postgres community, we merge them on our fork. So that's already possible. Yeah.
All right. So then that's a good point. So yeah, sorry folks for stepping aside in our conversation, but yeah, let's see. So yeah.
And then of course you need to test if the extension works. In theory, something that touches only the SQL layer should work because we use the same SQL layer. If an extension uses some features that we don't have or that we do differently because of the distributed storage, then it may not work, as we have seen with page inspect.
Yeah, because page inspect is basically for the storage layer, right, of Postgres, and our storage layer is different. We provide other tools to take a look at the state of the storage. Okay, so you installed it, wonderful. So you just downloaded the extension, installed under your YugabyteDB distribution, and right now it's already in runtime.
I run create extension just to get the functions that comes with it. The thing is that you may have a lot of extension and you need to do create extension to add those new tables or those new functions to be sure that they do not collide in their namespace. You can also create an extension in a different schema for that. So basically this extension has just two functions, and let's call one just to show what can be generated by those sequential UIDs.
Mm-hmm.
If I select UIDs there, and let me
what if you do the series, like generate series or call it multiple times? Oh, okay, that's what you want to do.
So you can see that I have random numbers there, but the prefix, and the prefix by default is 4 characters, but you can pass another one as a parameter. By default, the prefix stays the same during a 60-second window. So that's the goal. You want a UID where the rows that were inserted together stay together if you have a range sharding. Of course, if I generate an ID and do hash sharding on it, it will be scattered everywhere because that's the goal of hash sharding. And then after 60 seconds, this number will increase. So that can be useful in some cases. Either you want to distribute to ingest data faster, or you want to keep rows together because you know that you will query them together. For example, for time series, probably you will query on ranges of rows. So that's this extension. And maybe I can quickly show. Yeah,
we actually have a question, and the question is about the previous demo for the smart driver, and we are running out of time. So we can actually carry on this conversation next time, right, when it comes to extensions. But thanks a lot for Frank. Basically, what you've seen, there are many extensions that are already pre-bundled with YugabyteDB, same as with Postgres, and we already support a lot of extensions. We don't support those extensions that are, for instance, that were created for the PostgreSQL storage layer, such as PageInspect, because our storage layer is different. But also, if you have your favorite extension, and let's say that extension is not bundled with YugabyteDB, Frank showed you how to follow, let's say, step-by-step approach. You can download, you can install, and you can start using. Wonderful demo, Frank. The question is from our friend Pete. It was about the previous demo, multiple hosts, and it will be picked the top one, moving down, next one for preferences. Actually, that's a good point. Honestly, Pete, I need to take a look at the source code, because when we have those additional endpoints, I said that they are picked randomly, but they might be picked sequentially. I don't know. What we don't have for sure is like preferences. Yeah, probably worth discussing in Slack. And another one is either a setting that will discover the complete list and use it when certain hosts become unreachable. This is actually what's happening by default. You don't need to define any setting. Remember that configuration. Even if I don't have those additional endpoints, I just have one primary endpoint in my configuration. Even when you connect through that primary endpoint, the driver will discover the IP addresses of the other nodes. And if, let's say, any of these nodes goes down, you will be opening new connections through the driver, and the driver will be opening those connections to the healthy nodes, to the live nodes. So that already works out of the box. Sorry for answering this question late. I saw that you asked it like 10 minutes ago, but I didn't want to disrupt Frank, because when Frank is in the mood, we need to have him keep going. Okay, so Frank, yeah, we have 5 minutes left, folks. If you have any other questions, move forward, ask them. In the meantime, what's going to happen soon, probably in 20 or 30 minutes, today we published the following blog post. Let me share the screen. We published the blog post about PostgreSQL high availability options, because we love Postgres. We also use Postgres as part of the YugabyteDB database component. And one of the reasons why users move to YugabyteDB is advanced availability. But we also want to be honest with our users, with our customers, because there are several ways how you can make PostgreSQL highly available, not fully, like improve high availability in Postgres, right? And in this article, we are reviewing different options for high availability options for the following deployments. When you have a single database instance, you have a single primary instance with replicas, when you use a multi-master Postgres with a coordinator such as Citrus data, and when you use a multi-master Postgres named YugabyteDB. So take a look at this article. I will share it in the comments within a second or so. And also, we are going to publish this article in 20 minutes or so in Hacker News. And go to Hacker News, and if you have any experience to share, join the conversation, because we want to get a broader feedback. We want to see what people within the PostgreSQL database and application developer communities are thinking about PostgreSQL high availability, and how does this article describe that problem and that solution. All right, so sharing it with you in the comments. Any other questions or any remarks, Frank, before we close the stream?
No, looking if there are other questions. Yeah, high availability options are, of course, a very important topic. Distributed SQL databases are first to get high availability. And then if you need to scale to more than one node, of course, but even small databases may need to run on multiple nodes just for a question of high availability, not stopping them when there is a failure, not stopping the application when you upgrade some nodes.
Exactly.
And yeah, the Hacker News, if people want to vote up in the Hacker News, maybe I will put that in the chat,
all right,
so that people can go. So that's in 20 minutes or something like that, where we post it.
Yeah, and we are going to have a discussion around Postgres availability disaster recovery on Hacker News. Yeah, let me actually share this in LinkedIn. Yep. Anyway, so thanks a lot, Frank, for hosting this second episode, and thanks everyone for coming. Thanks to you, Pete and Kaval, for coming and asking your questions, and look forward to seeing you sooner in a couple of weeks. We are going to host another episode. So if you want us to discuss anything in details or show something in details, find us in Slack. Just tag me or Frank, and we will make sure that your question gets demonstrated or answered throughout the next episode. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.